Wow, if I had a nickel for every time I've made a video about Andorra, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Yes, I indeed made a video outlining the rough history of Andorra back in 2018, but a lot of it was focusing on how feudalism created the country and had such a weirdly confusing power structure because of it that helped it survive into the modern day without being absorbed by France or Spain. Despite that being most of Andorra's history, I didn't talk about the weirdest part of it. And that was when a random noble Russian fraudster tried to take over Andorra and declare himself prince and later king. Yeah, you heard me right. Andorra was going through weird stuff in the 1930s. The Great Depression mixed with some political problems led to the 1933 Andorra Revolution. Protesters occupied the Andorran parliament, demanding on to be able to vote for parliament with universal male suffrage and have a more constitutional monarchy. Yeah, only male suffrage. Women couldn't vote in Andorra until the 1970s for some reason. France and Spain didn't like this, so France sent in a few forces to occupy Andorra briefly to calm things down. But despite this, they realized it would be better to just grant the demands of the revolutionaries. However, despite this matter being settled, Andorra was now politically chaotic, kind of, I guess, at least by the standards of what they're used to, and it allowed for a potential opening for an opportunist named Boris Skossyreff. Believe me, Boris is a character. But before we get into the story of Boris Skossyreff, let's talk about this video's sponsor, Ground News. Bias and sensationalism are everywhere when it comes to both history and current events. With the echo chambers that can arise from it, it just gets extremely frustrating. That's why Ground News is here to solve that problem. Ground News is a first-of-its-kind website and app that lets you compare how a single news story is being covered across the political spectrum. You can be confident that you're getting the whole story thanks to its easy-to-use features that can help you analyze the news. There's the bias distribution chart and the blind spot feed, which show how different media outlets cover or don't cover certain stories and issues. However, none of you would be too surprised that the interactive map is my favorite, which highlights local news from around the world for a more nuanced understanding of the issues at hand. If you're looking for a better way to stay informed about current events around the world, check out Ground News by visiting ground.news/tigerstar to download the free app. Thanks again to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So, Boris Skossyreff was born to a noble Russian family in modern-day Lithuania in 1896. During his early years, he claimed to supposedly do a lot of things. He supposedly went to Oxford and Lycée Louis le Grand universities. He claimed to have served in the British Army during World War I, claimed to have spent time in the British Foreign Office, and claimed to have worked for a Dutch royal household. However, only the World War I service in the British Army seems to be confirmed. The other claims are either unknown or rejected as false. This played into Boris's further reputation as a swindler and fraudster, as during World War I he also got caught faking checks and swindling a golden watch. Making up stories kinda seems to fit that sort of character. Part of how Boris was able to attempt to support his claims was that he was a polyglot, meaning he was knowledgeable in many languages and learned them fairly easily. After the 1933 Andorran Revolution, Boris assumed he could take advantage of the atmosphere of the people wanting more rights by promising to grant them if he became the Prince of Andorra. That seems like a sudden leap in logic, but in May of 1934, he literally presented to local authorities his intentions to rule, and the ruling council absolutely ridiculed him. But Boris was also simultaneously discussing his ideas with some politicians, artisans, and farmers to gain support. But upon being rejected by the authorities, he left Andorra and spent time in the surrounding area talking with French royal pretenders. He was trying to build up a royal origin for himself and to gain their support so that way he could say he could take over Andorra in the name of the French king, the true rightful French co-prince of Andorra, not the pretender president of France. Well, eventually Boris wrote up a constitution of his ideas for Andorra, printed a bunch of copies of his constitution, passed them around, and in it he said he wanted to give more rights to the citizens and also wanted to transform Andorra into a tax haven for businesses to encourage foreign investment. In exchange, he demanded the right to be called the Prince of Andorra. On July 8th, Boris thought he had enough support of the people and enough politicians, so he declared himself Boris I, Prince of the Valleys of Andorra, Count of Orange, and Baron of Skossyreff, Sovereign of Andorra, and Defender of the Faith. This was all despite not currently living in Andorra, or having the authority to do all this. Despite that, on July 10th, Prince Boris approved his own constitution and then declared war on the Bishop of Urgell, who holds the other co-prince title of Andorra. The Bishop of Urgell was actually worried he would somehow lose his authority to Boris, so he got help from some Spanish authorities to find Boris and arrest him on July 23rd. So, yeah, it's not really an eventful or long reign. Although he proposed a new flag. After being detained by Spain, he had a long, complicated journey through Portugal and then to France, where he got arrested again. At one point during his journey, he began claiming he was King of Andorra rather than Prince for some reason. Then, upon the Nazi takeover of France during World War II, he was released from French prison, but collaborated with the Nazis, which led to him being arrested again by the Allies after they won, and somehow he ended up being sent to a Soviet labor camp in Siberia, where he was eventually released in 1956. Afterwards, he moved to West Germany and retired to a small town until he died in 1989. At quite an old age, actually. So, overall, this moment in Andorra's history was really weird. Boris was really weird. History is just weird, alright? Yeah, the end, I guess. Thanks for watching.